All right, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, December 1st, 2020 voting meeting of the Athens-Clarke County Mayor and Commission. We appreciate you joining us this evening. I'm going to go ahead and begin by asking the clerk to call roll for us.
Davenport,
Here.
Parker,
Here.
Link, Wright, Denson,
Here.
Poole,
Here.
Edwards,
Here.
Harrod,
Present.
Thornton, and Hamby.
I'm here.
Is that Thornton?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And Mike Hamby as well.
I'm
Okay.
here too, Jean. I'm not sure if my mute came off in time for you to hear me.
I got you. We have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. I appreciate it. All right. The first order of business is to approve minutes of meetings of Wednesday, November 4th, Monday, November 9th, Tuesday, November 10th, and Thursday, November 12th, as well as Tuesday, November 17th. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
I'll move.
Second.
All right. I have a motion from Commissioner Link and I have a second from Commissioner Davenport. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right. Minutes are approved. All right. Do you have any written communications for us, Madam Clerk?
We have none tonight.
Okay, great. All right. For everybody out there and for commissioners, we're going to be doing our planning and zoning items first. We have, I believe, 8 of those items. So that way there's the opportunity for the live public input as required by state code. And then we'll move on to our other agenda items. So first order of business is concerning 498 Little Oak Street. And I think staff is going to turn on the public comment sign to see if there's anybody here to speak to that item.
Mr. Mayor, I'll go ahead and read the ordinance associated therewith.
All right. Thank you, Madam, Mr. Attorney.
An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to rezoning a parcel of land comprising approximately 0.334 acres located at 498 Little Oak Street from RS5, a single-family residential airport overlay, to RS5A PD, single-family residential airport overlay plan development, and for other purposes.
All right. Thanks, Attorney Drake. All right. Is there anybody in the chamber here to speak to 498 Little Oak Street?
Commissioners, no one here to speak on that item.
All right. All right. We will move on to commission conversation. This is in Commissioner Parker's district. So Commissioner Parker, if you want to take it off.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is pretty simple. They're just splitting the lot in half. We do get some community benefit out of it, in that the applicant has volunteered to build sidewalk along there, which would be great for connectivity around the Firefly Trail, etc. And so with that said, I'm happy to approve, and I make a motion to that effect.
Second.
All right. I have a motion from Commissioner Parker and a second from Commissioner Link. Any further dialogue on this item? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? All right. Ordinance has been read, so 498 Little Oak Street is approved. All right. Our second item of business tonight regards 398 South Milledge Avenue. Is there anyone here in the chamber to speak to this item?
Mr. Mayor, I'll go ahead and read the ordinance.
All right. Thank you, Judd. Go ahead and do that for me.
An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to rezoning a parcel of land comprising approximately 0.73 acres located at 398 South Milledge Avenue from CO MAC Commercial Office Milledge Avenue Corridor to CO MAC PD Commercial Office Milledge Avenue Corridor Plan Development, and for other purposes.
Thanks, Attorney Drake. All right. Good evening.
Hello, Mayor and Commission. Thanks for having us. My name's Lori Bork, Newcomer, and I'm here as the applicant. And we actually wanted to request to please table this item until the January meeting. I had reached out to the clerk and Commissioner Link previously last month. We're still working out the details of our off-site parking agreement, and we want to make sure that we have all those details solidified for your consideration when you go to vote. And we hope to have that done by January. It's just taken a little longer than we'd hoped. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that request. Is there anyone else in the chamber to speak to this item, 398 South Milledge Avenue? Evening.
Good evening. I am speaking for Daniel Tokus at 420 South Milledge Avenue, the property adjacent to this application. I would like to begin by saying that no written notice of this application was received by the owner of the adjacent property, and no public notice was posted on or near the subject property as required by Athens-Clarke County and outlined in the document Plan Development Information. These infractions alone should require tabling of this application. We have dealt with this project for over a year. In that year, we reviewed staff reports from preservation planners that failed to uphold the guidelines of the Historic Preservation Commission and demonstrated what can only be considered preferential treatment towards this application by incorporating verbiage addressing economic viability into her report when this is not a standard of evaluation, thus influencing an underqualified HPC. We attended an HPC hearing during which the Commission abused its discretion and rendered its decision based largely upon zoning and use, as evidenced in transcripts from that hearing. At that hearing, we listened as the applicant was permitted, against protocol, to provide to the HPC inaccurate and misleading information regarding historic architectural elements proposed to be removed from 398 South Milledge, elements the loss of which compromises the character of this historic building. We later sat here in this room before this commission while the Director of Planning responded with false information to specific and important concerns of commissioners regarding reversibility of this project. Due to the protocols of the commission, we were unable to address that misinformation. A significant portion of this project is not reversible and as such violates the guidelines of the Milledge Avenue Historic District. Even after all of this, somehow we are still here fighting this inappropriate application that permanently compromises the integrity of an important historic building, one that is supposed to be protected under the guidelines of a local historic district. When the Planning Commission reviewed this project in August under a special use permit application, the accompanying recommendation stated if some or all of the variances are denied, then the special use permit request must also be denied. It stands to reason that the same standards should be applicable to this master plan development application. Adverse effects upon the neighboring property remain. We are looking at an application to reduce the buffers that shield 420 South Milledge from this development. That should not be approved. Failure to comply with parking requirements remain, a shortage of available parking by 21 spaces in comparison to that required for the increased occupancy. We also find a proposed solution for 40 of the possible 70 parking spaces that requires a lease that, unless in perpetuity, would only lead to continued problems, leaving a building that requires 91 parking spaces with only 30. Those 40 spaces would force the residents of 398 South Milledge to walk at distance, often after dark, in an area that has shown an escalation in crime directed at those walking at night. This only underscores the disregard and lack of concern that we have seen through Delta Phi Epsilon. An approval of this application is an approval for all the wrongdoing that has led us to this juncture. It is an approval to ignore important parking requirements, safety concerns, and adverse effects upon the adjacent property, a property occupied by year-round citizens of Athens-Clarke County. For all of these reasons, we have to ask that this commission deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you for coming this evening. Is there anyone else here to speak to 398 South Milledge Avenue? All right, last call for 398 South Milledge. All right, Commissioner Link, this is in your district. We, of course, have a request to table.
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and honor that request to table. So, yeah, I propose we table this item.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, have a motion from Commissioner Link and a second from Commissioner Parker to table until our January voting meeting. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, this item will be tabled until our January voting meeting. All right, third order of business tonight is 1060 Hull Road, for which a special use is requested. Attorney Drake, if you could read the ordinance.
An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to special use approval in the CG Commercial General District for a parcel of land comprising approximately 0.564 acres and for other purposes.
Thank you, Attorney. Good evening. You have 3 minutes.
I'm Tywanna Brown. I'm the applicant for that project. And I'm here tonight. If you have questions for me, I don't have any questions at this time, but I do want to let you all know that I appreciate you taking the time out to review my application and my proposal.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. Is there anybody else in the chamber to speak to 1060 Hill Road? All right, we'll go ahead and begin our discussion, ma'am. You can have a seat. This is in District 9, Commissioner Thornton's district. Commissioner Thornton, do you want to kick off conversation?
I spoke to Ms. Brown earlier in the process, and I think it would be an asset to the community. I think creating a small business is what we want to do, and I'm recommending that we accept this proposal.
All right, we have a motion for approval. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Thornton and a second from Commissioner Link for approval of the special use permit. Any further discussion of this item? All right, hearing none. All in favor of approval of special use?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, special use approved. All right, thank you for coming, Ms. Brown. All right, next order of business. Item number 4 regards 1825, 1885, and 1889 Lexington Road. And I'll ask Attorney Drake to read the ordinance.
An ordinance to amend the code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to special use approval in the CGA, Commercial General Airport Overlay Zone District, and in the RM1A, Mixed Density Residential Airport Overlay Zone for a parcel of land comprising approximately 9.42 acres and for other purposes.
Thanks, Attorney Drake. Step on up to the mic. Give 3 minutes.
I think the public comment's muted.
Yeah. Jason, can you unmute the public comment? I muted it because there was an echo when there was commission conversation. I apologize, sir. I'll start your time over as soon as they get it unmuted. All right, there we go. Go ahead.
I'm going to start back at the beginning. Good evening. My name is Joseph Bates with Smith Planning Group. I live at 180 Homestead Drive. I'm speaking tonight as the representative of the applicant, Tyler Watts, on behalf of this special use request. First, the proposed development does not violate any FAA regulations. Just want to be clear on that. The airport overlay is local and applies to the ground underneath the FAA regulated airspace. This airport overlay is comprised of 3 subzones: the runway protection zone, the most restrictive, the approach zone, and the least restrictive transition zone. All the proposed units are in the least restrictive transitional zone, other than the few units on the edge of the approach zone. The nearest building to the end of the runway is close to half a mile. And due to the land falling off from the runway 9, the height of our buildings are below the runway elevation. Planes will not be regularly flying directly overhead this development. And concerning airport noise, signed agreements will be filed waiving the right to complain about the airport noise of the present and the future as the airport develops. Quality of life, the buildings will be constructed to meet Georgia Power Good Sense insulation requirements to minimize aircraft noise, so thicker walls and soundproof windows. There are precedents for urban development around an airport. I have family in Brookhaven and have taken my kids to the Peachtree DeKalb Airport to watch the planes take off. In the last 5 years, I've seen multiple 4- and 6-story mixed-use buildings constructed around the airport about half a mile from the runway as our proposed development. And these buildings are not just in the transitional zone like our project, they are in the approach zone with planes regularly flying overhead. Concerning this corridor to transform Lexington Road into an inviting, walkable gateway to Athens, we all know we need mixed-use development. Currently, Lexington has none. Of the 4-mile stretch from the Classic Center to Walmart, over half is within the airport overlay. One of the biggest takeaways from the Connect Athens corridor study was the need to ensure retail along Lexington Road shifts to be vibrant. That means diversity of uses, specifically dense residential. Otherwise, the 1 million+ square feet of retail is going to struggle to stay open and struggle to be redeveloped. The corridor study proposes development nodes to kickstart Lexington Road's transformation, and one of the node locations identified was the subject site and the vacant tract across Lexington Road. Finally and importantly, this development will set aside 10% of the units as affordable for those making less than 80% AMI. Athens Land Trust has executed an agreement with the developer to provide administrative oversight for these 12 dedicated units to ensure they remain affordable for the next 20 years. We've emailed a copy of the agreement to the planning director and Commissioner Parker. As far as I know, other developers are providing affordable workforce housing, but no one else is proposing non-subsidized affordable housing for those making less than 80% AMI. Thank you,
Mr. Bates. All right, is there anyone else to speak to this item on Lexington Highway? All right, this is in Commissioner Parker's district. Commissioner Parker, I'll give you the first opportunity to comment.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know there was previously some concerns about some of the design features of the development that Planning Director Brad Griffin brought forward as additionally concerning following, in addition to some of the concerns about it being in the airport overlay zone. And I wondered if we could have Planning Director Griffin speak to those really quick, just so we can have those at the top of our minds as we kind of deliberate this issue.
Okay, sure. And largely is when we talk about during the agenda setting meeting, the primary concern was obviously the recommendation from the airport authority in proximity of this from the runway. It is, Mr. Bates is correct, it is not in the approach, it is largely in the transitional surface, but proximity to that runway is very, very close. The other concern that the Planning Commission raised was, they had some concerns with architecture, but I don't know that in and of itself is something that would cause a recommendation to not approve something like this. The other concern they had was the connection to the small residential street as the secondary means of ingress and egress. And I think we showed you a picture of that at agenda setting where it comes in off of, I believe it may have been Hollis. Yeah, it connects into Hollis Street, which is a fairly narrow street as their secondary way in and out. Those were the big issues, but by far, Commissioner Parker, the primary concern was the proximity to the runway and the recommendation from the airport authority not to approve.
Okay, thank you. I am less concerned about the proximity to the runway, as I believe I stated at the last meeting. I think that ultimately we do want to try to foster a sense of community in this area and have committed a lot of resources into studying how that can be done. But ultimately, we need folks to live around here in order to support businesses in the corridor, to sort of justify the incorporation of more bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure along this path. To make this a walkable neighborhood, we need folks living there who want to walk around. And particularly considering previous studies that we have been presented with regards to the crisis of housing we're facing in Athens, even not just affordable housing for folks making less than the area median income, which this project does include, but some of that missing middle for folks that would otherwise, if not able to find housing priced for a middle-class family, would end up gentrifying neighborhoods that have been historically working class. And so reducing some pressures on the housing market by moving forward with housing in an area where we do have a lot of infrastructure improvements coming to make it, to give it a character of community, to give it to make it accessible. I did just want to make sure that, and so I would like to make a motion to approve, but I do have concerns that perhaps the Planning Commission, had it not been for their reservations with regards to the airport proximity, may have recommended some other conditions with regards to, as you mentioned, Planning Director Griffin, with regards to the architecture or with regards to the ingress and egress. And so I wanted to ask if you felt those concerns were serious enough to warrant maybe some recommendations for some additional conditions if the commission were to approve this project.
I mean, I think at this point, Commissioner, I would say no. Yeah,
okay.
I mean, it's with it being a special use permit, it brings with it a binding site plan. If we start imposing conditions, because we didn't have any listed in our report either. You know, I think that one of the big concerns was the connection into Hollis Street, but you know, to condition that not occur then creates another needed variance for the 2 points of ingress and egress that have not been evaluated. So, I mean, my recommendation to you at this point, and I appreciate you asking the question, would be if you are to approve it, I would approve it as it is presented to you.
Okay, thank you very much. One additional thing I want to say, I'm pretty happy with the addition of non-subsidized affordable housing, though it's not a great deal. It's kind of rare to see in projects, particularly in my district, and so I'm excited about that. But the administrative and oversight role that Athens Land Trust has entered into an agreement to perform is not one I believe that they are being compensated for. And, you know, someone's got to approve those applications and do those audits. And so as increasingly developers come to us seeking partnership with them and making affordable housing happen within their projects, particularly, you know, as we pass measures to incentivize affordable housing in projects like these. I just want us to consider how we as a body and as a government are supporting that work through funding mechanisms for the land trust or other entities who can do some of that oversight work, to something I think we should probably come back to. But with all that said, I think this is a pretty cool project. I'm not as concerned about the proximity to the airport. I know that developments with this closeness to airports are precedented in other communities, something that people can make work, something that folks are willing to accept if the price is right and the location is good. And so I would make a motion that we approve.
I second it.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Parker. I've got a second from Commissioner Thornton. Recognize Commissioner Harrod in just a moment. Do want to make a note, Commissioner Parker. I think you're absolutely right. As we get toward a significant scale of targeted housing below area median income, and have to have a review process to ensure that, I think we are going to need a program to make that happen. You know, much like we have a program for housing counseling that we fund through federal funds every year. And so I've also had conversations with Athens Land Trust administrators, and they've indicated that a small scale, handful, a couple of dozen units are manageable with their existing resources. But I do think, as we all desire and we'll see additional affordable units on the ground, we are going to have a program for formal review that involves either some direct review by this government or outsourcing of that to one of our partners. So I'm glad you raised that point. Commissioner Harrod.
Mayor, I seconded it because I wanted to make a comment, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Thornton, and then I'll grab Commissioner Harrod.
I definitely support this project for all the reasons that Commissioner Parker stated. One question I would like to just put out there as we're brainstorming for the future: when we do these developments, are we considering renewable energy as a amenity in any of our developments? I think that we should encourage developers that we are supporting 100% renewable energy, and we should try to make that part of all of our developments that come before us. And my other point was, we have been talking about the development of the Lexington corridor for a long time. And I think this is a good first step in that direction. especially the affordability and not being subsidized housing. So I fully, do support this. But those were the two things: keeping the renewable energy on the table as we move forward with other developments. And if there's any way that we can include it in this development, I wish we would. And to support the development of the Lexington corridor.
Thanks, Commissioner Thornton. I think there's somebody here who's had lots of conversations about viability of Lexington Highway. Commissioner Herrick.
Thanks. I was only going to, I don't really have any strong feelings about this, but given that the conversation seemed to have started off with the question of whether or not the planning staff and particularly the planning commission just sort of gave it the thumbs down based largely upon what the airport authority was saying. I'm just wondering if maybe, given what Commissioner Parker's comments about how, in general, she seems to like the project, but there may be one or two things that she might like to tweak. Maybe it might be worth putting it off for a month because this is a special, because this is a, once this is agreed upon, I think it'll be harder to amend later on. And, maybe if there's a few minor tweaks, it might be better to add them in a month and, vote on the whole thing rather than get something that's, 75% of where we want it to be. But as I say, I don't really have any strong feelings one way or the other. I just kind of float that out there as something to think about.
I want to recognize Commissioner Link and then circle back to Commissioner Parker.
Yeah, thank you. I also am in favor of this project. I understand the airport authority's charge, but there is already a whole lot of development in that transitional zone. As someone who lives in the landing zone of the hospital helicopter, you do get used to these things, and people choose to live in such places for for location reasons. I mean, we've got plenty of folks who invested a lot of money in houses pretty much directly on the railroad tracks and boulevard. I don't have a problem with the design of these buildings either. I mean, it's modest and unpretentious, for what's going to be primarily, workforce housing. And I really feel like this area needs some development. I mean, it's zoned for this kind of development. The only thing hindering that development is that airport zoning. And, Lexington corridor needs a kickstart, and this kind of mixed use development could be exactly what it needs.
Thanks, Commissioner Link. Commissioner Parker, let me get Commissioner Edwards since we haven't heard from him and I saw his indication, and then I'll circle back to you.
I'm looking at the agenda report here. I don't see anything that's going to bind them to providing this 10% affordable housing, non-subsidized, set aside. And I also, the unanimous verdict of the airport authority coupled with the unanimous verdict of the planning commission, there wasn't even a dissenting vote that I can kind of hang a hat on to go in the other direction here. I hesitate to put this many bedrooms right beyond the runway of this airport. If we achieve the dreams of many and get a commercial carrier one day, we're going to have regular takeoffs of jets directly above this multifamily development. And that to me is not a good quality of life for anyone to live under. I don't care what they pay, but I think maybe we should consider the families that might live here, the children that might not have a choice, that would live in these areas and be subjected to jet traffic directly over their homes. Let's think about what their quality of life might be. I mean, the airport overlay zone exists for a reason. The airport authority voted unanimously. I think there's other types of development that are certainly more appropriate in this area. I'm thinking of lighter commercial use, maybe some sort of business that's open Monday 9 to 5, but not some place where kids are trying to concentrate and do their homework. I mean, this is just not a suitable area for multifamily housing. And the fact that I'm looking at this agenda report and not seeing anything in their site plan or any ordinance we're enacting here that's going to bind them to hold out 10% of these units for affordable housing. If I recall, a couple blocks away from this on Vine Street, we passed through another multifamily residential development under the promise of a developer that they set aside affordable units. Subsequently, that property was transferred, and whatever we thought we voted on was not binding. It didn't travel with the land. So I plan to vote against this. Thank you.
Anyone else before I return to Commissioner Parker? Commissioner Parker.
Okay, there's a couple of different comments I want to respond to, and hopefully I can remember them all. My first question, I think, was in response to something I'm glad that Commissioner Thornton brought up with regards to sustainability in projects. I know we've talked previously about there being certain circumstances under which, or certain parameters, if clearly spelled out, under which we can specify that affordable housing is required as part of the binding site plan for planned developments. I wondered if there is a way in which we could in future make condition approval upon certain sorts of sustainability standards for PDs or special use permits that we approve. If Blaine could speak, or not Blaine, I'm sorry, if Plan Director Griffin could speak to that.
And Judd may want to have some thoughts as well.
I mean, I guess my initial response to that would be, I think it probably largely depends on what those sustainability factors were and how they related to the project being asked for. I think it's something worth looking at. It is currently not something that we review and place any level of emphasis significantly under the current review criteria for these types of special uses. But I think that would be a discussion that we'd want to have, and probably would have some limits on it in terms of what could and could not be done.
Okay, that's good to know. And I know that we've been working on our own standards for sustainable development and renewable energy on LRC for a while, and so
right.
I mean, figuring out what we mean when we say sustainability will be, I think, a critical first step towards that direction if we choose to make it. But thank you, Brad. Second question, I think, is in response to Commissioner Herod with regards to why not table this. It sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brad, but a lot of the changes are things that, or a lot of the minor issues with this development are things that there's nothing really we can do about. Like removing that ingress and egress on Hollis Street kind of creates like a bottleneck elsewhere or other problems with folks entering and exiting the development. And so I'm not sure if we could get that worked out through tabling, as well as I think Commissioner Link brought up. I mean, I don't really have a problem with the architectural style of the development. It does seem pretty modest and fine to me. I don't know if Brad, you'd like to speak a little bit more to those architectural issues, or clarify whether or not I'm understanding properly some of the problems that presented themselves to the Planning Commission. But I guess, yeah, two questions. Architecturally, would there be any, like, if you could speak more to any sorts of, what your issues were with the architecture, as well as verify that, like, with the ingress-egress issue, at least, there's not a whole lot that they can do to fix that.
I think probably the best place to start with this would be more procedurally. Architecture can be so subjective in terms of what one person likes, somebody else does not.
Sure.
The table for a month really, puts it in a position where that would not afford any time for a plan to be sent back to the Planning Commission for any further consideration. And really, unless you all specifically requested certain plan changes to be made as part of your table to be brought back to you as a modified plan, probably not the option that would work. There is another option that is within the ordinance that would allow you, this type of a special use permit, to send the item back to the Planning Commission for further study and consideration. But that, from that standpoint, there's really not a time limit on that. It would go back to the Planning Commission in more than likely at this point, their January meeting, and then back to you again in February. But even with that, if you're going to do that, I would strongly encourage you to, if you're going to send it back with some specific direction.
So we could put a specific direction that we are intending to approve, like hopeful that we can approve the project, but looking for some modifications with regards to your concerns around ingress, egress, architecture, whatever else presents themselves to you all.
Yeah, I mean, from a staff standpoint, you could do it that way. And then we would, it's kind of even a short turnaround to get it back to you in February from that standpoint. And you're not affording procedurally the Planning Commission. I mean, the first time they're going to see it again is after the plan changes have been made based on discussions, and then they would vote on that. It's, I think the big issue of concern largely was the access connection, and that is, in order to eliminate that access onto Hollis Street, you're going to have to do one of two things. You're going to have to completely redesign the project layout to get a second curb cut onto Lexington, which may or may not be in the best interest of overall traffic safety, or you would have to ask for a variance and submit the full variance application paperwork, and that would then run with this application when it came back to you. To eliminate and only have one way in and out instead of two.
Okay, that's helpful. And I'd be happy to hear from other commissioners about whether those options sound attractive, though my feeling is that I am okay with the project as proposed and feel comfortable approving it tonight. I think the last thing I'll say is in response to Commissioner Edwards' comments. Again, folks, I would much rather folks be able to stay living in Athens and have to hear planes go by than move to Oglethorpe because there's not enough affordable or workforce housing. And so I do think that it's incumbent upon us to figure out ways to stimulate development in other areas that foster a better quality of life. But folks in other cities have chosen to live in close proximity to the airport in developments like these. I think we should leave that option up to people when they figure out what kind of quality of life they are comfortable with for themselves and their families, rather than having that dictated to them by the commission. And finally, there was one more thing on that, but now I forget. So I yield my time.
All right.
Ensuring the livability or the affordability, rather.
Oh, yes. Oh, thank you so much, Commissioner Herron. So yeah, I'm looking at my email right now, and it looks like they only sent the agreement between the developers and Athens Land Trust to me. I would be happy to forward this to you so you all have access to it, or if you all would like me to read excerpts of it so you understand some of the details of the agreement. So I'm happy to do that right now. But I have seen the agreement between Athens Land Trust and SRI GP LLC. And it does lock in these 12 units at rates that are actually kind of impressive. The 2-bedroom units are at $700 a month, and the 1-bedrooms are about $650, which you'd be hard pressed to find in a lot of places in Athens, especially anywhere this centrally located. But I'd be happy to talk you through other details of the agreement if you have any further questions. And thank you for that catch, Commissioner Herod.
I have yet to hear from Commissioner Hamby and Commissioner Houle, so I'll go in that order and then circle back to Commissioner Thornton and Commissioner Link. Okay, Commissioner Hamby.
hang on. I'm pulling it's Commissioner Parker's topic, and I forget to unmute myself. So
Hey,
it's contagious.
It is. And I would kind of ask maybe to consider sending this back to Planning Commission. I mean, I'm getting convinced that maybe the airport being that close maybe not be as much of an issue. It still kind of is weighing on me a little bit, but I think what's weighing on me a little bit more in regards to this is the fact that I know you did get the agreement sent to you, Commissioner Parker, as you said, but it's not within the binding document that we're voting on. So that I would be concerned about in that regards. And I also think, if we are given a special use and going against the Planning Commission recommendation and the Airport Authority recommendation, well, I do see now that they say in collaboration with land trust developers set aside 10% of the units as affordable units for families. The thing I would say, if we are given that special use, why not give us more units as affordable units for families that make them less than 80% AMI? I mean, there's got to be some trade-off here for that, and really 12 units doesn't seem like a whole lot when you consider the scale of this project. I will also say that I know Brad indicated that there's the architecture and the design of it is subjective, and certainly it is. But if you look at the layout of it, I think they could. I think I'd like to see if the Planning Commission can make some other recommendations about how it could look. I mean, it looks pretty standard to me. I don't, and I think we ought to encourage people to build up a little bit higher standard. I mean, I certainly think people that are living in workforce housing deserve just as much amenities and nice things as anybody else. For example, look at the mail kiosk. I mean, the mail kiosk is all the way toward the back. I mean, the whole layout doesn't seem very community building friendly. I mean, we don't even see what the front elevations of the Lexington Road facing commercial buildings will look like. There's one parking lot over here to the right that just kind of sits out there. I'm not sure why, but anyway, like I said, all this is subjective. But I'm just curious if the Planning Commission or the developer could look at ways to improve the sort of flow of it all. It kind of just doesn't really look resident friendly to me. My 2 cents worth. I mean, for what it's worth. I mean, I don't disagree that at some point some sort of development could happen along here. And I will say this: I know they got up and spoke about people will sign agreements about the noise complaints. You can sign an agreement about not complaining, but that's not going to stop you from complaining. My grandmother lived on Riverdale Road for a number of years, right near the Atlanta airport. And the airport, she passed away several years ago, actually. And the airport, after she passed, bought her house because of the noise. You can sign all the agreements. I guess my point is people can sign all the agreements that are suggested in this document, but that doesn't mean they won't complain, and that doesn't mean that we won't respond, which we should. So just my 2 cents worth on all this. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Hamby. I'm going to move to Commissioner Houle, who we haven't heard from, and then back to Commissioner Link, and then Commissioner Parker.
Thank you, Mayor Gertz. I feel inclined to support this for a lot of the reasons we've already heard from my fellow commissioners, but I am feeling concerned about the issue of whether this affordability component is binding or not. I'm wondering if Attorney Drake can speak to if there's a way we can attach whatever this memo is that Commissioner Parker has, but the rest of us maybe haven't seen, so as to make sure that the affordability component is binding. So in my mind, that's the most important component of this. And if we're able to do that, then I'd be inclined to support it moving forward. And before I hand it over to Attorney Drake, the other thought just to share on the issue of noise in the airport. I think there's a difference between people moving into a place where there already is an airport versus something noisy being built around them. To that end, I don't know if it would be worth it for us to also see what that agreement is that people are going to be shown when they're moving in. If there's a way to ensure that it's binding, that people are aware that the noise of the airport may increase over time. But it seems to me, generally speaking, that people are going to be aware of what they're moving into if they're moving into this place right next to the airport. And I'd rather give people the choice, especially if some of those folks are going to have an affordable choice, than to not build housing. And then to respond to the broader issue of a lack of affordable housing in the community, I agree with some of the concerns raised by fellow commissioners that we need to look for better options moving forward to stimulate development in places, ideally places where there already are apartment buildings that are kind of falling apart, to make sure that we're building affordable housing where there already is housing. But Attorney Drake, could you speak to whether we can make the affordability component binding tonight?
Well, I guess I'm a little unclear. I'd like to hear from staff about why they feel it's not, because I thought that I heard Commissioner Hamby say it's referenced in the report. So Brad, could you provide me some context?
Yeah.
Why we feel like it's not binding?
I mean, we typically, from a standpoint, when this came in, it was simply a report that said that they would, work to provide, affordable units, but there really wasn't any binding mechanism with that. The documents that came from, evidently signed from the land trust, came this afternoon. I mean, I saw the email come in. I have not reviewed those. I mean, my advice certainly would be that, if there was a desire, now that we've got a signed agreement between two parties, to attach that as a condition, it would be something that I would want the attorney's office to review and make sure that there wasn't something in it that could create concerns. I haven't looked at it at this point either, honestly. But, I guess the biggest issue, typically when we get these zoning requests that come in and the applicant says that they will work, with a third party to provide it, we're just really not set up within planning for a long-term standpoint to ensure that that is maintained for 20 years. There's no review mechanism, enforcement mechanism that we could go after. If somebody were to complain to us 2 years from now that they're really not doing that, our hands are tied, which is why we typically don't tie these into zoning items.
Well, I agree with Brad. I think it's reasonable to attach that as a condition. I have not reviewed that email either, and I would hate to agree to something that I haven't seen. It's not unusual for us to attach conditions like Brad. Is it Brad? But having not seen it, I wouldn't want to agree to it. That I haven't seen it. To allow that to happen. Is this one that we could continue one time, Brad, for 30 days, so we could review that condition? It sounds like the developer's agreeable to it. He said that in his opening.
Yes.
Proposal.
Yeah,
presentation.
The commission certainly has the right to hold for up to 40 days. What that would do is give the full commission time to review that agreement, give us time to review it, and return to, this body next month with, some direction. It's not going to provide opportunity to make any plan changes, in the 40-day window. That would have to be sent back to the full planning commission. And you're looking at probably a 3 to 4 month, honestly, cycle through to get any significant changes made.
Well, what we normally typically do is we draft a special condition to attach to it. We send that to the applicant to make sure it's what they are agree it captures the essence of the agreement or the condition, and planning also reviews it. So I'd like to follow that normal process if that's what we're going to do. Commissioner Hool.
And since I made the earlier motion to approve, I would be happy to hold in order for us to make this agreement legally binding and give you all the opportunity to review it as well. I did not realize that I was the only person to whom that the agreement had been sent prior to this meeting, and I apologize for that.
And I will pull my second and hold my comments. But I do want to go on record that I support this wholeheartedly, and look forward to working out the glitches as we move forward.
So I know some other people wanted to speak. I don't know if they still do, or if I can go ahead and make a motion to that effect.
Yeah, so if you want to make a modified motion to hold until the January meeting, that'd be great.
Okay, I motion that we hold until the January meeting to provide time for us to review and consider making the affordable housing agreement binding.
Second. Or Commissioner Thornton should second it.
I second it.
All right, so modified motion from Commissioner Parker, seconded by Commissioner Thornton to hold until January. Anything else that folks want to put on the table for dialogue tonight, or ready to move on to the next item?
I have a quick suggestion. They said that back entrance along what's the name of the road?
Hollis.
That was a concern. We might want to talk about a binding condition to put a speed bump or two along that road. That might be the concern of any traffic coming out of there, adding to speeding problems in that neighborhood.
Thanks, Commissioner Link. And Commissioner Denson hadn't spoken either.
Okay, I'm fine. Yeah, I can wait till next month.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Harrod.
Sorry, since we're all we're all talking about things that we've just thought about. So if the traffic would have
First
come
thought,
out,
best thought. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go right ahead. I'm sorry.
You're fine. So if the traffic's going to come out onto Lexington, obviously it's going to be easy for it to turn right. In turning left, though, that's a 5-lane highway. I mean, is there a plan to put a traffic light there at some point? Do we know, or how's that going to be handled? Brad, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's no intention at this point to put in a signal. And then my guess is, given the number of houses, even with these 120 apartments, they're not going to meet a warrant study to signalize an access point. And what's driving the connection to Hollis right now is, for this size of an apartment complex, you've got to have 2 points of access to public streets. And so that Hollis being their second point of access was necessary in order to not ask for a variance. But you're right. I mean, the solution, if you don't go Hollis, is now we've got 2 driveway curb cuts potentially going out on Lexington, and I'm not sure that's the best solution either.
Yeah, because I mean, one of the things that creates traffic hazard is having multiple curb cuts on a wide road. And I mean, I know that we've had some discussions about with the $4 million that we put in the corridor for Lexington and some of the SPLOST money of perhaps putting a median down the center and perhaps narrowing the travel lanes, because that will slow the traffic down. Even if we do that, it's still a 4-lane highway, and as I say, turning right out of it won't be an issue. But if you're trying to turn left, first of all, you're never going to be able to make it because the traffic's going to be so heavy anyway. I mean, I try and come out of where the recycling bins are up by the tag office, and sometimes I have to sit there for 10 minutes waiting for traffic in both directions to clear based upon the timing of the traffic lights at Gaines and a bit further down the street. So as I say, if we're kind of pondering, we're going to hold this for a month and pondering how to tweak it a little bit. I don't know if this is, but it's certainly something that needs to be thought about, I think.
Thanks, Commissioner Harrod. Any further thoughts before we vote on hold? All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Parker, a second from Commissioner Thornton to hold until the January voting meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, most of us will see this next month. Commissioner Harrod can watch on the TV. All right, we are going to move forward to the next item, which is 1015 Macon Highway. Is there anyone in the chamber to speak to 1015 Macon Highway for the proposed rezoning? Good evening. Just a second. I am going to unmute you. It'll take me just a second to get there. All right. I think staff may have to actually approach the device, or you may be able. There we go. Look at that. Good job.
I am technically adept most days.
Good work. Thanks, sir.
So
all right, you have 3 minutes.
All right. Well, I'm Brett Thurmond. I represent I live at 160 West Thompson Street, Bogart, Georgia. I'm an engineer with Armentrout Matheny Thurmond, and I represent the buyers and the sellers of this property. We were very happy to get a recommendation out of the Planning Commission for a recommendation of approval with condition. We agree with that condition because it aligns with our desires to maintain the house as it is on the property. Our intention for the rezone is to place a nano distillery here at this location, and the house will serve as a tasting area and marketing center for the distillery, and then the upstairs is going to be maintained and kept as a office spaces. There will only be internal modifications to the house itself. The nano distillery is a little 1,200 square foot building that we're going to build behind the house. It won't be visible from the Macon Highway. The house sits upon a knoll that goes up from the highway and then on the backside falls off. So when you're on the street level and looking up, you do see the nice white house. It's been there for a very long time, and but you won't see anything else related to it. You don't see the existing parking lot that's there. You don't see the any other access that comes up to the property. It's very well sited for this application. In terms of its location of the new building we're going to add, which is behind the existing house, it's sited away from the apartment complex behind it and also from the residential property that's downhill on the right side of the property as you look at it from the road. So we feel like it's a great site. We feel like it's a great application for this particular use. It allows, it's easy to get on this corridor. The owners are very happy to be being able to sell this, and the developer and the buyer, who is the same person. This is a startup business. They want to build their business in Athens. It's from some long-term Athens residents here who are stepping out and making this commitment to help grow the community. And we feel like it's a great thing to have here, and we would respectfully request that you vote for this rezone. Thank you very much.
Muted, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak to the Macon Highway project? All right, this is in Commissioner Harrod's district. Commissioner Harrod, excuse me, Hamby.
Yeah, make sure. And I don't want Commissioner Harrod talking about this. This is a good project. People who are working on this project, I see them there in the audience. They've been working hard on it and have done a good job of putting forward a plan that I think will work for the street and for the neighborhoods around there. It's going to be a gin distillery. I think this will be the first in Athens. This house, ironically enough, used to be a fraternity house, so it's not that much difference from being a distillery when you think about it. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion. This is so much easier than talking about multifamily, isn't it? So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve this project.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Hamby.
Second.
Mr. Mayor, let me read before the vote, please.
I appreciate that, Attorney Drake.
An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to rezoning a parcel of land comprising approximately 2.3 acres located at 1015 Macon Highway from special use in CO commercial office zoning with conditions to CN commercial neighborhood with conditions and for other purposes.
All right. We've got a motion from Commissioner Hamby. We have a second from Commissioner Thornton. Any further discussion of this item? As folks contemplate their first drink. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. All right. We're going to move forward to item number 6, which is the text amendment regarding RS zone building setback standards. And we sort of discussed this a couple of months ago. This was one that was carried over through 2 cycles. Is there anyone in the chamber to speak to this item? All right. Any input from commissioners, or do I hear a motion?
I move that we accept this amendment.
Second.
Mr. Mayor, let me read the ordinance for the vote, please.
Thank you, Attorney Drake.
An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to single-family residential zoning, building setback standards, and for other purposes.
All right. Thank you, Attorney. All right. We've got a motion from Commissioner Denson and a second from Commissioner Davenport. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. All right. We're going to move on to the next text amendment, which is regarding RM zone density for lots of record. Is there any input on this item in the chamber? All right. Commissioner Link?
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to move that we adopt this measure, and I want to thank the Planning Commission and planning staff for moving it forward. This has mostly an impact on older neighborhoods where you have substandard lots, lots that are smaller than what is allowed in that zone, and lots under a certain percentage of that typical size would be allowed to build 2-bedroom homes by right instead of 3-bedroom. I think this will help curb some of the student gentrification of some of our older neighborhoods. And, you know, it kind of also acts as something of a historic preservation tool in de-incentivizing the demolition of some of these smaller homes in favor of larger 3-bedroom homes. So I would like to propose that we accept this amendment.
All right. I've got a motion from Commissioner Link. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right,
Mr. Mayor, I'll read the ordinance.
Thank you, Attorney Drake.
An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to RM zone density for lots of record and for other purposes.
All right. Thanks, Judd. All right. Any further input on this item? All right. I've got a motion from Commissioner Link, second from Commissioner Denson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Hearing none, we're going to move forward to item number 8, text amendments for community tree management. A little bit of cleanup of that ordinance there. Is there anybody in the chamber to speak to this item? All right. Seeing none, is there any input from commissioners, or would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve. I like trees.
I love trees.
All right. I've got a motion from Commissioner Houle. Who is the second? I apologize. We've got a motion from Commissioner Houle, second from Tree Hugger Commissioner Harrod. All right. Any further discussion of this item? All in favor?
Let me read the ordinance, Mayor.
Go right ahead, Attorney Drake. I apologize.
An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to community tree management and for other purposes.
All right. Thank you, Attorney Drake. All right. Motion from Commissioner Houle, second from Commissioner Harrod. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. All right. That includes our slate of planning and zoning items. And we're going to move forward to our consent agenda, which are items number 9 through 14. Is there any commissioner who would like to remove any of the items from our consent agenda tonight? Give you a moment to review. All right. Is there a commissioner who would like to make a motion for approval of the slate of consent agenda items?
I'll move.
I'll second.
All right. We've got a motion from Commissioner Harrod and a second from Commissioner Link. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Any opposed? All right. Items 9 through 14 are approved as a slate. Good job, everyone. All right. Next order of business is old business. We're moving on to item number 15, which regards the Services Training Officers Prosecution and Violence Against Women Grant Program, which is a competitive request for applications. So input from anyone? I see Commissioner Parker. You're muted. That's all right. You knew it was going to happen.
I was too excited reading through the agenda follow-up report to figure out what I was trying to say. But anyway, so on that, I was reading through Manager Williams' follow-up response to some of our questions from the work session. And it does seem like this grant funding could be used, or at least putatively is described as, funds available for support efforts provided to victims of women and children. Though, for the most part, if not entirely, from my understanding, the funds are being used to reimburse investigators for work already done involving the prosecution of folks that are accused of crimes against women and children. And so I would really like to see us in the future try to channel these monies in a direction that is more supportive towards the healing and wellness of folks that are impacted by violent or sexual crime. Simply locking someone in jail doesn't do a lot to help the person impacted by that crime receive counseling, receive rehousing if they were living with a domestic partner that harmed them, other sorts of supports that they need to move forward from what happened to them. And it does seem like, from what I am reading here, that those are activities that could be funded through that, and that I would certainly like to see us fund through this in future iterations, since this is one of those grants that comes up year after year. I would also like to note that though the acronym is STOP Violence Against Women, prosecuting people for crimes against women does not necessarily end violence against women. What ends violence against women is training about healthy relationships, when folks have access to mental health care services, and they learn proper coping skills such that they're not lashing out in violence, starting really early with teaching children about consent, things like that actually decrease the incidence of violence in the first place, such that investigating those crimes is not necessary on the back end. So really what we're doing here through this is prosecuting people who have already harmed others rather than ensuring that no one harms anyone in the first place. And so I just wanted to through our conversations around these grants and other ways that we fund criminal justice activities, and start to reorient us to what can we actually do to prevent violence in our communities. And with that said, I am going to make a motion that we approve with the condition that in our public safety work session that is upcoming, we get some time talking about violence prevention strategies in the community that are not necessarily police-led.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Parker and a second from Commissioner Thornton. I do need to have Attorney Drake read the ordinance.
An ordinance to amend the FY 2021 operating and capital budget for Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, so as to provide grant funding if awarded from the Georgia Criminal Justice Coordinating Council's CJCC Stop Violence Against Women Act, VAWA competitive grant program for expenses related to 4 investigator positions and a records clerk directly supporting efforts to prevent and reduce crimes of violence against women and for other purposes.
All right, thanks, Attorney Drake. And Commissioner Thornton, I'm going to ask you to make a follow-up comment, and then I also see Commissioners Davenport and Houle. Go ahead, Commissioner Thornton.
I hope as we really get in depth in these conversations, that we even start looking at the oppressors. I've brought this up before. A lot of the men and women who violate victims, they may need that type of mental health and mental support coming from whatever backgrounds they come from. Often we just talk about the women, but I think to end some of this or put a dent in it, we got to try to figure out how we help those men and women that may be the perpetrators of these domestic situations. That's my only comment. And I know that's for a further discussion, but I keep bringing it up because I don't want to lose it in the midst of everything we're doing.
Thanks, Commissioner Thornton. Commissioner Davenport.
Yeah, I have nothing. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to raise my hand.
Okay. Commissioner Houle.
Thank you. I just wanted to loudly echo Commissioners Thornton and Parker on their points. I'm going to be really disappointed if a year from now we're approving reimbursement again for only investigating violence after it's happened. I think if we want to really honor what this acronym applies for grants and stop violence against women and children and people in general, then we need to be investing in public safety measures that aren't just responding to crimes after they've occurred. So I really hope that we can pursue not only the VAWA grants, but also I know there's some other CDC programs out there that have been utilized in other communities to try to do violence prevention work. I really like to see us do violence prevention work and not just violence response. I also want to share, just for the benefit of the public, and thank you, Manager Williams, for putting together very thorough responses to our many questions for you. I know I had a lot of them for you in the agenda setting meeting. And you shared this update that the backlog of ACCPD rape test kits that were waiting to be examined no longer exists. Analysis has been completed on all of the backlog test kits. And that's not something I was aware of until I got that update from you. And I think a lot of people in the public are probably still wondering that. I know I've been asked about it by many folks. So I just wanted to share that for everyone, that we're actually caught up, which is pretty wonderful, which also means that we don't need to be looking for funding for that, thankfully. I'd really like to see us do the kinds of things that Commissioners Thornton and Parker talked about. I did want to ask Mayor Gertz, I saw in the recent update to the work session schedule, I didn't see where a discussion on public safety was on there. Are you planning to add one at some point, or is that, can I make a formal request now?
In the new year, we're going to see a
Okay.
public safety, including some policing specifics. Of course, coming out of our retreat, we have the safety and justice team that I'll be launching at the first of the year.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much.
Manager Williams.
Yes, and I've heard from Commissioners Houle and Parker and perhaps Commissioner Thornton on possibly redirecting the grants for more, obviously got to be eligible, but proactive as opposed to after the fact. I just want to clarify for everyone that, these 4 investigator positions, 2 are on the domestic side and 2 are on the sexual assault side. And all 4 of these investigators, that comprises our special victims unit. And I think it is laudable that we want to get to where we prevent this from happening, but these will still need to be investigated. And I say that to say that if the commission wants to recognizes that and through the budget, put additional general fund dollars, the $120,000 to offset the grant, then we could move this grant into a different arena or, in ways that you were suggesting. But I think that regardless of whether or not this grant pays for these investigators, they are necessary and they are typical, to help prevent any offenders, from doing any further harm. If they, and it's really the courts, these are mostly complaint driven by the victims. The courts do decide the disposition of the case. So if next year, if you'd like to see these grant funds applied in a different way, then we would need to offset those grant funds with general fund dollars to support these efforts. Thank you.
Thanks, Manager Williams. Circling back to Commissioner Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would push back on that just a tiny little bit, in that if we are investing fully in preventative supports that help people channel their, emotional energies away from violent types of response to conflict and help people develop healthier relationships, those investigative positions will no longer be as necessary. Won't we have quite the volume of cases? Maybe one day we get to the point where we don't really have a problem of sexual assault in our community at all. And so starting to try to shift resources around such that we're eliminating the root causes of the problem rather than always investing in those reactive forms of response, I think is something that we are very capable of local government, and hope that we choose to do.
Thanks, Commissioner Parker. I think we all look forward to that world that someday will be, recognizing that there's an arc of activity to get there.
Yeah.
Commissioner Houle.
Yeah, I can see how this is sort of turning into a lily pad about a broader discussion that I know we're all looking forward to having at a later date. But I did want to ask just about this particular grant, Manager Williams. Are we basically receiving the maximum amount we could, or if we were to build out new programming or create a new position that meets some of the needs that we're talking about, would we be able to apply for a larger sum through this grant since it's a competitive grant year to year?
Sorry, had to unmute there. And I'm going back to look at that. I think that was our allocation this year. So I believe it's the maximum, but I would need to confirm that. But as your question pertains to what's possible next year, we can certainly have that discussion, as part of the many things I'm sure you want to discuss at the upcoming work session. So we may be able to apply for more with a different activity, Commissioner Hull, to answer your question, but I'll have to confirm that.
All right. There is a motion from Commissioner Parker and a second from Commissioner Thornton on the floor. Is there any further discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. All right. We're moving on to item number 16. Item number 16 is calendar year 2021 grant acceptance of Byrne Justice Assistance Grant. There a motion on this item? Commissioner Denson?
Thank you, Mayor. I put together a CDO that everyone should have received last week before Thanksgiving. And the major change to it, really the only change to it, is something we discussed during the agenda setting session, which was to move on the goals and objectives for this grant, the program that we have right now, to move the goals and objectives to eliminate marijuana for being one of the things that's being focused on here. And we definitely see the need for us to be focusing on distribution of heroin and methamphetamines and other scheduled narcotics. But I do not believe it is the best use of our time and our money to be focusing on criminalizing and chasing after distribution or possession of a drug that is now legalized over much of our nation and actually grown and distributed for profit. I don't think that is a focus on priority of the residents of Athens-Clarke County or of this commission. And with this CDO that I have drafted here, this program can move forward just with the marijuana focus being taken out of it and the simple possession being taken out of it. And so with that, I make a motion to accept the commission defined option presented by myself and Commissioner Parker.
Thanks, Commissioner Denson. Commissioner Parker, were you seconding?
I was, and I was muted. Oh yeah, but yes, I second. And I just wanted to add to that we've been engaged in the drug war for like 50 years. We have well-documented evidence these days that it is racially motivated. And we see that in the data that was provided to us by the manager's office about what this narcotics task force is doing. 77% of those arrested by the task force last year were African American, or at least during the period of roughly a year where we have data presented to us. Despite the fact that in 2016, at least one study, and I'm sure others have corroborated this, have found that Black and white people use and sell drugs at very similar rates. And so if we have similar rates of drug distribution and usage in our communities across racial lines, it is absolutely unacceptable to me that 3/4 of the folks that are being brought in by the task force are African American. As well, the most common kind of arrest cited was intent to sell marijuana, which is also, I feel like should be a source of shame for us as a government, given that 2/3 of the American public support marijuana legalization. And as Commissioner Denson brought forward or brought up, 15 states now have legalized the drug, and many people, predominantly like wealthy entrepreneurs, are making lots of money in selling and distributing this plant. And so while I think that the CDO makes a meaningful step forward in ending the drug war here in Athens, we do have more work to do ahead. I think we need to start treating drug usage as a public health issue and providing people with supports to stay away from a substance abusive lifestyle, be that fostering more investment in living wage jobs, affordable housing, educating our youth so that they have opportunities to engage their community such that they don't end up getting into drugs. Or for folks that aren't into drugs, because that is a personal choice, that we have equitable and comprehensive access to treatment programs and to other sorts of supports to help people manage substance use in a way that allows them to live a healthier and more productive life. That, to me, is the best use of our dollars, be they locally funded or federal. And I'm honestly not really interested in us approving this grant again moving forward. I think that particularly with the grant position, the grant administrator, grant writer positions that we made as part of the prosperity package. When you think about prosperity, I think I see a linkage between folks that are turning to drug use or use of hard drugs because their housing situation is unstable, because they're food insecure, because they don't have a good job, because they don't have access to educational opportunities, as ways that we can actually start to combat the public health crisis of drug misuse in our community. And so I'm hoping that we can start bringing in grants that embrace that more progressive and compassionate paradigm, and honestly, reject ones that continue a war on drugs that has seen our prison population nationwide skyrocket from about 300,000 in the 1970s to over 2 million today, breaks apart families, hardens poverty into an inescapable cycle, and drains our tax coffers of dollars that could be spent on educating our youth and housing our neighbors. And so I'm optimistic that in the year to come, with that directive very clear, we could see different kinds of grants come forward that we can approve that shift our focus toward treating drugs as a public health issue and treating folks in our community with the dignity and compassion they need in order to overcome substance abuse issues. But I hope that you all will join me in taking this first step by taking marijuana out of the focus of this narcotics task force.
A couple procedural things before we move on to commission comment. Attorney Drake, I know there's an ordinance associated with this. If you could read that.
Yes, sir. An ordinance to amend the FY 2021 operating and capital budget for Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, so as to provide grant funding if awarded from the Georgia Criminal Justice Coordinating Council's CJCC Byrne Justice Assistance existing local project grant program for expenses related to 4 investigator positions directly supporting efforts of the Northeast Georgia Drug Task Force and for other purposes.
Thanks, Attorney Drake. And then I wanted to ask Manager Williams, I know there had been some question of the scope of available goal sets for accessing this grant in the first place. I wanted to see if you had any information to share kind of that precedes the next part of the conversation.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, a couple things. One is that we weren't able to confirm with the granting agency if the change of this goal would make the application ineligible. So we weren't able to discern that. And listening very closely to Commissioner Parker, one of the things she said there at the end was that, removing this as a focus of the drug task force. And I just, and I think some of the data we shared that, simple possession was a very minor, it wasn't really a focus for the group. It was sort of if they caught somebody doing something else with more serious charges, it was an add-on. But that being said, and I understand this commission has issues with some of the laws of the state, but the officers, if they, for instance, if you remove marijuana from these goals, and they are investigating something else, and they come across a substantial amount of marijuana or growing operation, they still, there's discretion, and then there's having to follow the laws, so I just want to be clear that this is relevant to the grant, and obviously we'll follow the direction with you there, but in the bigger picture of trying to achieve, less prosecution of marijuana, again, the focus of this group is not on minor possession, it's on bigger issues, and Commissioner Parker mentioned the intent to sell. Those things will continue as long as the state has those laws on their books.
Thanks, Manager Williams. All right, I've got Commissioner Davenport, Commissioner Houle, then I'll circle back to Commissioner Parker and Denson.
I just got a question about the how this grant functions or works, because it says multi-jurisdictional. So, and I commend Parker and Denson's CDO, and I support it, but I just wanted to put that in context when it comes to multi-jurisdictional. So if we take out the marijuana possession, how does that affect the other jurisdictions?
Well, you're removing the goals from the grant. And again, there are 8 officers involved in this, 6 of which are Athens-Clarke County PD. And of those 6, 4 are partially funded by the grant. So, I mean, they will continue their activities. The chief certainly would be noted that there's a preference by this body of not pursuing, marijuana through this action. But again, they'd still be held to enforcing the laws of the local government and the state. So it would continue to some degree, especially with larger infractions, I would think. And again, this bigger discussion that we're having, I understand this grant has prompted that. I really would hope that, if we're looking for additional context or, to hear your vision and potential changes, that, we have a bigger discussion around that work session and really dive into those things.
Thanks, Blaine. I've got Commissioner Houle up next.
Yeah, I'll spare folks the rationale for a lot of my thinking because I think it's largely just echoing what we've already heard from my fellow commissioners here. But I just do want to share that I also am not interested in continuing to pursue these justice assistant grants to fight the war on drugs on the local level. I think it seems like we have a large consensus, soft consensus at least in this body, that the war on drugs is a failure, and so why we would continue to prioritize it in our public safety locally is a little lost on me. So I look forward to those more elaborate discussions on what we can do bigger picture. But short term, I think, built into the goals of the grant is targeting, sorry, I'm getting a little wind on my microphone here. One of the stated objectives, if we don't pass this CDO, is to increase indoor marijuana cultivation investigations by 5 cases. I just don't see why a body that's full of folks who have campaigned on decriminalizing the substance would want to put thousands of dollars behind trying to put more people in jail for growing that plant. And then, where there's a lack of full consensus yet on the broader discussion of how to approach substance use in a more compassionate way as a community, I think, that's why I'm interested in passing this CDO instead of just voting no on the whole thing. But I would also urge my colleagues to think, when we're discussing SPLOST in the coming weeks, mental health recovery facility is one of the projects on the list, and the larger and more expensive judicial center is also on the list. And so maybe if we want to be thinking about where we can put our money where our mouth is, that's another place where we can shift priorities. And the last thing I want to share, and again, I really appreciate, Manager Williams, your very thorough responses to our many questions. But we had talked a bit about the racial disparity, which I know Commissioner Parker alluded to earlier, and you had confirmed that, yes, we do still have that racial disparity. And so that draws into a much bigger discussion about a lot more than just the war on drugs. But it also includes, when you had said, Manager Williams, the investigations are not self-initiated, but are driven by citizen complaints. Citizen complaints only go so far as we've put resources for them to be pursued. And so I think this is an opportunity for us to not over-resource a type of complaint we don't care that much about. And so it's with that in mind that I would like to support the CDO moving forward. Thanks.
See Commissioner Link before I circle back to others.
Yeah, as someone who spent 3 weeks of my summer vacation in a state where marijuana is legal, I can attest that, the state of Massachusetts has not fallen into some dystopian chaos because they legalized marijuana. In fact, research shows that places where marijuana has been legalized, opiate addiction and overdose has gone down, and addiction to other more dangerous, lethal drugs has subsided. That being said, I certainly support removing marijuana from this, but also as someone who lives in a place where methamphetamine dealer has set up on an annual basis for months on end, and testifying to the many months it takes for these investigators to gain the evidence to prosecute those kind of operations, which is dangerous. Beyond the drug operation, there's speeding cars coming and going, there's sex trafficking. Myself, my neighbors have borne witness to these events in a neighborhood where you have a toddler living within that house and school-aged children, small little girls living 10 feet away. I can attest to the extraneous crimes and dangerous behaviors that come along with some of those operations and dealing with, really harmful substances. So I think we need to have a more nuanced conversation about how we address the war on drugs and drug trafficking in our community, and you know, precisely where funding is focused. But I certainly support Commissioner Denson's CDO.
All right. Is there anyone who we haven't heard from? Commissioner Herod?
Thanks. I mean, I too don't think that we need to be spending a lot of time focusing on marijuana, especially possession of small amounts. But I do have a more of a kind of a technical question, and I know that the manager said that you don't have an answer yet from the funding agency. But just because I like to kind of think through the consequences of various different actions. So I guess two questions, and maybe you can answer them, maybe you can't. The first question is, if we were to not do this, does that mean that our police officers who are part of this task force, if they were involved, how would that work if they were involved in, let's say there's somebody's got hundreds of pounds of marijuana, worth millions of dollars, and they're going back and forth, let's say, between Oglethorpe County and Athens-Clarke County. Does that mean that our police officers, once they hit the county line, would not be involved? And then the second question I have is, if this grant were not accepted, or at least if the CDO were accepted, does that simply mean that the police department would transfer other officers who were working on other activities to pursue, large-scale marijuana dealing, and basically pull them off from other types of activities that they're presently engaged in?
Those are good questions, Commissioner Herod. And the first is that there is coordination with surrounding agencies. Now, the investigations do allow intelligence to be developed and deliberative fact-finding. And let me answer your second question first, which will inform the first question. Chief Sproul, as we relayed in the follow-up report, feels like this is an important activity. He gave, some instances of where some violent offenders are being apprehended through this. Operation Benchwarmers was one of the examples he gave. So these officers would continue the type of work that they're doing. He would have to use different resources within the department to help fund that activity if this grant is denied, or in the changing of it if it's no longer a competitive application.
So I guess, just so I'm clear, it doesn't necessarily mean then that ACCPD stopped investigating marijuana issues. It just means that they may pull off, or they may not, but they may pull officers off other types of investigations. Is that what you're saying? Yes, and just once more, and to be clear, these are grant opportunities that help offset, using local financial resources for these types of activities. It's clear through this discussion that there's some questions about these activities from the commission, and I don't want to put it all on the work session, but these are grant opportunities which have begged the opportunity to have this conversation. I'm not sure tonight's where we change the trajectory of how laws are enforced and which laws are enforced. I do think we can have a bigger and more meaningful discussion at a later time. But to answer your question, if the grant is denied or is not eligible, the chief will continue this type of activity because he has stated he feels like this is helpful in reducing crime in the community.
All right. Circling back to some folks, Commissioner Denson, anybody else interested? Follow up, Commissioner Parker.
Thank you, Mayor, and I really appreciate this whole conversation. I think it's been really good. And just to clarify, and I think especially Commissioner Herod's point, I mean, while I do wish that the CDO, if enacted, would somehow bar us from being able to investigate or prosecute any and all marijuana possessions or something like that here in Athens-Clarke County. Like Manager Williams said, the state law still exists, and I understand that is the laws that's on the books. So, but what the CDO does do is it takes out the very intentional prioritization of focusing on marijuana cultivation and distribution. As Commissioner Hull brought up, I mean, it was listed in the objectives that the very first objective actually in this whole thing was to the increase indoor marijuana cultivation investigations. And the outcomes talking about seizure of marijuana plants. So we're simply taking that part out because I don't believe that this commission, that this government, the community wants us prioritizing resources and funding from a grant or from our general fund or anywhere on focusing on marijuana when you can just, you jump on an airplane, literally jump on an airplane for just a couple hours, and then you're in a place where you can not only have this, but profit from it. And I read through the report that Manager Williams gave us that Chief Sproul wrote up about some of the specific situations and going through. And every single one of those that I read specifically talked about that, there was some other reason that this person was a danger to the community or something else was going on. They either were trafficking meth or involved in shootings. All of these things that the CDO that I'm talking about doesn't affect. Those things would still exist. Those people who are committing those crimes would still be investigated and arrested, likely as they should be if they're out shooting people. So the CDO simply takes that part away about the marijuana distribution, removes it. And honestly, I would be shocked, absolutely shocked, if we had a grant rejected just because we decided not to focus on marijuana. If the federal government is pushing forward grants saying that you have to focus on marijuana to get this grant, I guarantee you that there are plenty of states that have legalized marijuana are getting the Byrne grants. And therefore, they're obviously not focusing and prosecuting on marijuana cultivation. And with that logic, I really feel extremely confident that we can go and pass the CDO and that this grant would still be accepted.
Thanks, Commissioner Denson. Commissioner Parker?
I want to speak to the coincidence of violence around folks that are involved in drug trafficking, and the fact that these are more often animated by conditions in these communities and the illegality of these substances more so than an inherent criminality or dangerousness of folks that are involved in the trafficking. If they weren't illegal, people wouldn't be shooting each other, trying to protect their turf, because they could go down the street to a shop and get it. Or, they wouldn't have to be scared someone was going to rob them, because they would receive the full protection of the law that other citizens enjoy. As well, the reasons folks are dealing drugs in the first place is the lack of concrete and fruitful economic opportunities in our community, which we as a commission have the power to influence and should, when we talk about things about like the prosperity package, again, also think about those activities as mitigating some of the underlying causes of these issues of violence that sometimes come with drug trafficking. And my final thing is that these conversations and what I'm hearing from a lot of my fellow commissioners just speaks to the need for us to pass a parallel ordinance decriminalizing marijuana locally. I know there's been a lot of back and forth about whether or not we can and whether or not that puts others in a politically sticky situation. But I think the political will is here among this body and has been for several years. And if we're worried about the operationality of the CDO we're putting forward with regards to, state law and how that influences the ways that our law enforcement officers are engaging in those investigations, then the next step to me means that we need to put different laws on the books locally, and we have the power to. So I just want to put that out there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Commissioner. I see Commissioner Thornton.
I really was supportive of the CDO until all of the discussion. I'm more confused now. I thought it was a very simple thing. I thought that there would need to be a lot of work to make sure we do this right. Now I'm back to a place, I think I'm going to support whatever goes. I probably will vote no now because I'm totally confused. It seems like there was so much information shared, but there were no real solid facts for me. So I'm sure it'll pass, but I'm going to vote no. But I look forward to working more on something more substance and facts than some of the things that I've heard tonight. But I was for it, but this has gotten too complicated for me. And I'm very simple-minded. So I'm going to move forward. Whatever the vote is and whatever comes out of it, I will work with my fellow commissioners. But I'm just done right now.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any further comment before we move to a vote? All right. I apologize. I failed to write down who was the motioner. All right. Commissioner Denson was the motioner. Is Commissioner Parker the second?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. All right. We had a motion from Commissioner Parker. Excuse me. Motion from Commissioner Denson. Second from Commissioner Parker. Attorney Drake, you read the ordinance already. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I was just confirming. Is this going to be a vote on the CDO only, or the whole act, CDO and the?
As I understand it, it's a vote on the CDO, which is the underlying ordinance modified with new goal language.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Clerk Spratlin, if you could call roll for me. Clerk Spratlin, I think you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you now.
Denson,
Yes.
Hool,
Yes.
Edwards,
Yes.
Harrod,
Yes.
Thornton. Thornton,
You're muted.
Oh, no.
Hamby,
Yes.
Davenport,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Blake.
Yes.
8 yes, 1 no.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right. We're moving on to item number 17. This is the AXON Services and Equipment Contract Extension regarding on-officer cameras and electronic stun devices. I'm going to go ahead and have Attorney Drake read the ordinance just to begin with.
This is item 17. I don't think there is an ordinance with it, is there, Mr. Mayor?
Oh, okay. I apologize if there was a budget ordinance, but this is just allocation of existing budgeted funds. I believe you're correct.
Yes, sir. Gene, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
No ordinance.
So no ordinance with this. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. Any commissioner like to provide input? Commissioner Hool.
Thank you, Mayor Gertz. Yeah, so I'm hoping everyone got the CDO I shared late last night. I'm sorry that it came to y'all late. I was initially thinking that I would just make a motion to approve one of the options until I realized that it would probably be best submitted to y'all as a CDO. But I'm actually thinking we might do well to just have some more time to talk through some of the financial implications of what that CDO would look like. So I'm inclined to make a motion to hold the item. But before I do that, just to share for the benefit of the public and my colleagues kind of where I'm at, I am not convinced that we need to continue to spend what's going to end up being $1 million on tasers for our community. Our police department did just fine without it for many, many years until fairly recently under Chief Freeman, as I understand it. And I don't feel that we need to get locked into a contract with a company that essentially has a monopoly on these devices, can build in their own obsolescence and require us to spend more than $250,000 a year. Certainly, if we're going to make that kind of a financial commitment, I'd like to understand why that's warranted. And since the body cameras are going to remain in operation under the existing contract for those for at least a couple more years as well, I'd like to just have some more time to understand some of the details of the finances of this if we were to move forward with a contract that's just for the body cameras and data storage and not for the tasers. So I guess with that, I'll make a motion to hold this item until our January meeting.
Seconded.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Houle and a second from Commissioner Parker to hold. I want to recognize Commissioner Thornton. You're muted, Commissioner Thornton.
Doggone Mariah.
No, you can't be blaming me.
It's catching. It's catching. I do want to thank Commissioner Houle because I know how passionate he is about this issue and issues involving the police. I have tried to reach out personally to Chief Lumpkin because we did not use tasers when the chief was, the past chief was the chief. And I really do try to be objective and make sure I get both sides of the story. So I'm thankful that we can have more time on this one. And I appreciate Commissioner Houle for giving us that tonight.
Any further input? All right. There is a motion from Commissioner Houle, a second from Commissioner Parker to hold this to the January meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Next order of business is item number 18 regarding the SPLOST 2020 program. And this would authorize a budget transfer for program administration. We're going to have a work session a week from Thursday, so on December 10th, to discuss tiering. We know we've got some more work to do from this, but this item would create accounts, which is one of the necessary pieces of circuitry to get the motion underway. Is there an ordinance associated with this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. An ordinance to amend the FY 2021 annual operating and capital budget for Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, so as to establish the budget for the Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax SPLOST 2020 program, to establish a budget for each project, to amend the project budgets to reflect the allocation of funds for program administration expenses, to authorize the budget transfer, to consolidate the funding for program administration and for other purposes.
Thank you, Attorney Drake. All right. Manager Williams, anything else you want to mention about this item?
Well, just a brief comment, because I think we all heard some of these discussions about, the cost of administering the SPLOST, and certainly I think that it's worth an investment to move these projects along. It takes a great deal to sort of project and program manage. But in the agenda tonight, and as you know, and the public doesn't, we acted on a long-held idea of bringing program management, that is sort of managing the entire SPLOST 2020 program over the next 12 years in-house. And you created the Capital Projects Director position, which we filled in September with Mr. Robert Cheshire, who, of course, is going to lead us through our SPLOST hearing discussion next week. And as a part of this recommendation and what you would be approving, Robert has seen fit to recommend that we decrease the amount of funds spent on program administration from 3% to 2%, which is not insignificant. That's about a $2.5 million savings over the program. And so I want to call that out because I think it's important to the citizens and to the residents and what we've heard through the whole SPLOST process. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Manager Williams. Entertain a motion.
Well, Kelly, I'll make a motion to hold this, but I do want to make a comment first.
Okay.
I appreciate the savings that Robert has brought to us, but I will say this: we voted in January of this year to engage a process of an RFP. So I'd kind of like to know when we're going to vote on. I mean, in January of this year, we were told we'd vote on it in March or April. It's now
December.
So it's almost like we're putting the cart before the horse on all this. I mean, some sort of project manager may come in and want to take a second look at this, and we're voting on this right now with it like this. So at what point are we going to be voting on an agreement with an outside firm to help us manage this along with Robert?
It's a good question, Commissioner Hamby. So the team that was assigned to do the interviews for the program management has completed all their interviews and is gathering this week to make final recommendation following review of the application package and those interviews. And so that's going to be coming in front of this body for a January vote.
Okay, that's fine. So it took instead of 4 months, it took a year. But okay, I'll make that motion to do whatever it is we're waiting on here.
So this would just adopt an ordinance to amend the FY21 annual operating and capital budget to establish a budget for each project, basically setting up an account within the finance department for each project. Authorize me to execute the related documents, and that way we'll move forward next month with the tiering.
Okay, but it's not voting on the tiering just yet, right?
Correct. That is, okay. We're not voting on the tiering.
Okay.
Yep. Commissioner Houle?
Thank you. Clarifying question. Apologies if this is redundant to my more experienced colleagues, but if we set up these accounts, we're not actually allocating any funds to any of the accounts until we vote on the tiering, correct? So the funding that we've collected will still just sit in what we might think of as like a bigger bucket and won't get dumped into its respective buckets until we've established the tiering schedule. Is that correct?
Well, yes, thank you, Mayor. So you are setting up the budgets, which is required by law, and these budgets, Commissioner Houle, were part of the SPLOST referendum. So, the projects were approved and the amounts, that were communicated through a very public process in the SPLOST Oversight Committee. As you know, we have a SPLOST delivery project process where, project concepts come to you and preliminary plans and final. So this is all subject to your ultimate approval. And obviously, yes, the tiering is a huge piece to this, is knowing when these funds get spent. But this does go through the administrative process of setting up the accounts. And to Commissioner Hamby's clarification, yes, that this does not preempt any discussions you're about to have on the tiering. It just recognizes the amounts that were understood by all to be dedicated towards these, at least initially. Of course, the commission has the ability, over time, if some projects come in under or over, to move funds around. But, I think we're all beholden to honor what the residents have approved through referendum.
Thank you, Manager Williams. Yeah, that's helpful. I just wanted to make sure that as the discussion around how we tier the projects drags on a little bit, that the money we're collecting this month and next month until we end up making that final vote isn't getting default put into one bucket or another. So thank you.
It is not.
Commissioner Thornton?
I'm sorry, I had to step away for 1 minute, and you may have discussed this. Does this decision tonight have anything to do with the SPLOST manager oversight or the hiring of the manager at all to oversee this whole process? That's my simple question.
No, ma'am. That the management firm will be determined at the January voting meeting following recommendation of that review panel that'll make their final decision this week following review of the applications and then interviews.
And Mayor,
so when that person comes in, they will already have this pot thing going on, already in place, right?
So, Mayor, if I might, and just because the commissioners probably understand this, but so the public understands. So this is merely setting up budgets, Commissioner Thornton. And there's a difference between program administration and project administration, and the RFP that Commissioner Hamby was alluding to. After 14 years, y'all directed last year that we go back out and have a competitive process for the project manager. The program manager was brought in-house. The project manager RFP process, which the mayor mentioned, is wrapping up, and we hope to come to you perhaps in January with a recommendation. It depends on how that committee feels. And then the follow-on discussion is also having the tiering meeting next Thursday. So there's a couple of upcoming decision points that kind of all come together here to move things forward. But tonight is just setting these budgets up as they were ordained through the previous discussions and applications and approvals.
All right, and I've got a motion on the floor from Commissioner Hamby for 1A and B. Do I hear a second?
I second it.
All right, got a second from Commissioner Thornton. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, everybody. All right.
Mr. Mayor, would you clarify, was that to hold to January or to approve?
No, to approve 1A and B.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to item number 19, which is the Office of Operational Analysis Audit Work Plan. See, moving forward on my screen, apologize. All right, Commissioner Link, do you want to review these two audit scopes?
I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and put this on hold at least till February. The audit committee was only able to have an abbreviated meeting last night, and the Office of Operational Analysis is having some staffing challenges. We're not going to be able to meet again till January, so it's going to be at least till February when we might be ready to vote on this item. So I'm asking that we put it on hold.
All right, motion to hold till February. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Link. I've got a second from Commissioner Davenport to hold till February. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you much. All right, item 20 is on hold pending further conversation with the Clarke County School District. Item number 21 is T-SPLOST 2018 Project 5 and SPLOST 2011 Project 9, the Oconee Rivers Greenway. We now have an easement agreement with the Oconee Hills Cemetery. So certainly be interested in either commission input or a motion on this item.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Davenport and a second from Commissioner Link. Any further input? All right, yes, Commissioner Denson.
I'll just say I'm extremely excited about this. This is something that's been worked on not only by this commission, but by many commissions going back nearly a decade, right?
More than a decade.
More than a decade. And then the staff getting this all worked together, our attorney's office. There was maybe a moment where I wasn't sure if it was going to happen. So I think that makes it even more exciting to actually happen. So we can finally take down that little that mesh fence there at the end of our greenway and extend it on.
That's right. Before long, somebody will be able to walk basically directly from Nucci Space down to College Station Road, uninterrupted. So we're very excited. I am as well. Thank you for that. All right, we do have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Good job, everybody. And I just want to particularly thank staff and our outside liaison who were able to get this over the hump. Moving on to item number 22. This is a construction services contract for Firefly Trail subproject 6 from T-SPLOST 2018 and subproject 4, the bridge over Trail Creek. As you recall, we had to bring this to committee for some modifications. As Rail Trail Committee Chair, Commissioner Harrod would go ahead and kick us off.
Thank you. So I would like to make a motion to approve. We've had a long discussion about this. This, I think, is a beautiful design for this bridge. We have had some budget issues, but I think that the user group has come up with a good strategy for dealing with this. And from a personal point of view, I've chaired the Rails to Trails Committee since I think 2008, and I'm just really grateful to be able to get to vote on this bridge before I leave the commission, and it will be standing there a lot after I've gone. And as I say, I think it's a beautiful design, and I just really want to give thanks to the user group, but also to the Rails to Trails Committee. They've really worked hard on this over many, many years to get to this point. And I think the community will really enjoy seeing this bridge finally built. It's taken us a long time to get here, But it's a beautiful design, and I look forward to crossing over it at some point. So I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right. Further input, Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to clarify that that this motion, I think we've all seen the letters that we've gotten recommendation asking for us not to do the cost savings of getting rid of the chemical treatment to the bridge timbers. This motion does not include that getting rid of that, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Motion from Commissioner Harrod, second from Commissioner Link. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Any opposed? All right. Another trail segment we look forward to walking over together. All right. We're going to move on. Let's see here. Item 23 is a request from the Classic Center to increase the hotel motel excise tax from 7 to 8%. The attorney sent a memo regarding this to commissioners. I just want to give you a heads up. This will be for a vote on your January agenda. 24 is on hold as well. As regards
Kelly,
to yes.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't see the memo coming from the attorney. Do we have the authority to raise the hotel motel tax, or do we have to ask our state legislators to do it for us? Can you just
Great question. Yeah. So it's a sort of a three-part process. This body would pass this motion. It would then get kicked over to the local delegation to the General Assembly, who the Classic Center Authority is already in conversation with. And then it would come back to us for a final ordinance passage. So it's sort of a three-phase process. But yes, we do need collaboration from the General Assembly. That's right. Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I just think it's important to relay to the public why we're proposing to raise the hotel motel tax. From what I understand, this is partially to help fund the Classic Center arena. Initially, the plan was that that portion of the funding would come from a land lease where a hotel would be built on Classic Center property, and the money from the lease of the land under that hotel would go towards funding the arena. That's no longer feasible or no longer wanted for a number of reasons. There's been some objection from other hoteliers in the community, and the current circumstances of hotels in the pandemic, I guess, pose some challenges. So the alternative is to raise this hotel motel tax to get those funds to pay off that debt service for the arena. Did I get anything wrong there?
No, that's pretty accurate. Hoteliers were not interested in a competing hotel on the Classic Center campus. The Classic Center Authority approached them with the prospect of raising the hotel motel tax from 7 to 8 cents to fill that gap in the Classic Center's funding, and all were acceptable to this. And just very briefly, in this composition, rather than so currently, the unified government receives 1 penny out of the 7, or 1/7 of the hotel motel tax take. The combination of the Convention and Visitors Bureau and Classic Center receive 6/7 or 6 pennies. In this this added penny, this 8th penny, the unified government would receive 30%, and the Classic Center would receive 70%.
Okay, so we will not be seeing another high-rise hotel on that end of town.
Oh no, not via this action. Yeah. Commissioner Houle and then Harrod.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Are we just seeing this raise with paying for new construction in mind, and then are folks? Does the funding continue to go in that proportion that you just described, Mayor Gertz, after construction is completed of the arena and things with the Classic Center?
I believe this is a 20-year horizon. I don't have it in front of me, Commissioner Houle, but I can review that with you.
Okay, thanks.
And it may have been that the attorney sent that memo before you were sworn in, and if that's the case, I'll make sure to forward that to you as well.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Harrod.
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify for people that are watching at home that because it's the hotel motel tax, this is basically paid by out-of-town visitors, and so it's a way that we can. It's one of the few ways that we can recoup some money from people that use our infrastructure. So it's not. It's really not going to affect people that live in Athens-Clarke County. It's really going to be revenue that's generated from visitors. And then the other thing is that the non-classic center part of our revenue that we're talking about, we can use for various different kinds of economic development projects. So it's an important source of money that we can use for all sorts of economic development activities. So I just wanted to make that clear.
That's correct. And this does bring us to parity with City of Gainesville to our north, Macon to our south, both of whom are at 8% and have been for a few years. Manager Williams?
Well, I was just going to say the local impact, Commissioner Harrod, I think that's very important for folks to know. And from a local impact, usually it's the hoteliers who are concerned about competitiveness, which the mayor just spoke to. In this case, they have brought this forward and support this, is my understanding.
That's correct. All right. Further questions? All right. You will see this for a vote in January. All right. Item 24 regards the Hickory Street parcel. This has been placed on hold, removed from the agenda for further review. Moving on to item number 25. This is the 151 Pinecrest Terrace exception to the water and sewer policy. To entertain a motion for that item.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Harrod, second from Commissioner Edwards. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, we're going to go slightly out of order. What's listed on the most recent version of the agenda as item 29 is modification to our emergency management ordinance that extends to 40 days the amount of time in which we can put an emergency declaration, simply because, as you recognize, as we move from month to month, sometimes our voting meetings don't line up exactly as a 30-day increment between them. And so 40 days, allows for that slight wiggle room in when our voting meetings are. So I'd entertain a motion for approval of update to our emergency management ordinance. And,
Mr. Mayor, can I read the ordinance, please?
Do. Thank you.
Yeah. An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to emergency management and for other purposes.
Do I hear a motion?
I move.
Second.
I've got a motion from Commissioner Link, second from Commissioner Denson. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, and then we're moving to item 26, which is the 10th ordinance declaring a local emergency related to COVID-19. And Judd, if you could read this ordinance.
Yes, sir. And it's actually it's the 11th, and Gene corrected it on subsequent.
Oh, 11th.
Yep, an ordinance for the 11th declaration of a local state of emergency related to COVID-19 and for other purposes.
I hear a motion for approval.
I'll move.
Second.
I've got a motion from Commissioner Link and a second from Commissioner Davenport.
Are we not going to have Judd read all the whereases?
Oh, he wants to. He lived for it.
Because I got to go off and make a cup of coffee whilst he does that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, item number 27, let me pull my sheet out, are appointments to boards, authorities, and commissions. You had many of you were on the interviews. I very much appreciate great deal of participation. List was emailed to you. After a passage, I'll read the list. So I'd entertain a motion for approval of the slate.
So move.
Second.
I've got a motion from Commissioner Denson and a second from Commissioner Harrod for the slate of board, authority, and commission appointees. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. So Motion carries. So the appointments tonight are to the Industrial Development Authority, William Smith, to the Library Board, Sophia Bogue, Ruth Vernatico, and David Woods, to the Board of Tax Assessors, David Lynn, to the Board of Elections, Hank Kadir and Adam Shirley. And that is our list. All right. And let's see. I think that covers all the voting items. Report from myself. Just want to remind everybody that for another 3 hours and 46 minutes, we are still in Giving Tuesday. It's December 1st. So if anybody's out there and you got a couple of dimes jingling in your pocket, there are a lot of great organizations doing fantastic work right here in this community that could use your support. It's obviously been a challenging year, so I encourage everybody out there to support those entities that are doing great work. And there are so many of them that I won't call them out. Also say this is World AIDS Day. I was thinking about that in the context of the pandemic crisis that we're in. I think the nature of 2020 is that a lot of us have thought in retrospect about so many experiences in our lives and how those have led to now. And I was thinking just a couple of months ago about walking in Greenwich Village on Halloween 1992 for the Halloween parade to commemorate those lost to AIDS. It's an annual tradition in New York City. And I was then thinking here, 28 years later, while there still is an AIDS crisis, it's so dramatically diminished because of scientific advancement and better communication and better knowledge. And so I was thinking in the same frame, I'm so looking forward to when through our collective action, this current pandemic is diminished in its impact on our lives. And so thoughts go out to everybody who has been impacted by HIV and AIDS. And as our thoughts go out to everybody who's been impacted by COVID. Finally, before I turn it over to Manager Williams, I want to let everybody in the public know that Commissioner Wright is in our thoughts tonight. As you can see, she's not with us. Her mother has passed away, and so please carry her in your hearts. Manager Williams, I know you have one item to present to us as a budget grant item.
You're on mute.
Yes, it is catching. Yes, this is something we talked about back in September, and this is a grant for Central Services Department for $10,000 to accept an Urban and Community Forestry Grant award for the iTree Eco Study, and just to notify you of that. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Manager Williams. Any items from you, Attorney Drake?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. I'll go ahead and begin with Mike Hamby, and we'll work backwards to Commissioner Davenport, who can provide us with some wisdom and adjourn.
I don't know if I'll provide with wisdom, but I would like to mention that, of course, tonight is Commissioner Harrod's last voting session. And it's taken me, I've spent the past, this is what a loser I am. I've spent the past couple of days thinking of anything nice I could say about Commissioner Harrod, and I've had to drink a few beers and other things in order to come up with something nice to say about you, Andy. But I did come up with some things, and certainly some things that you've done for District 8 and for the Athens community. It's a bit sad that you're leaving. I don't know who I'm going to make fun of now. Certainly when the word carriage comes up, I mean, it's pronounced garage, and it's not methane, it's methane, and all these other British words that you say that are totally incorrect for the South and anywhere else in the United States for that matter. But you should be real proud of what you've done for District 8, what you've done for Athens, and what you've done for this commission. You ask good questions, you raise good points. And sometimes we listen to you, but sometimes we just shake our head and wonder why. But the work you've done on the Firefly Lexington Road, and your newsletter and East Athens. That newsletter of yours, I learned all about this government just by reading Andy's newsletter. Everybody should write it. And I know several of others, Tim and Allison's now starting to put out newsletters. It's really making me look bad, which is maybe your goal, Andy. But I'll miss working with you, Andy. You've been a good friend. You've been a good commissioner, and I'm sure we'll see you around town after this COVID stuff is over with, and have a drink to celebrate all that you've done for Athens. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Great words. Ovita.
Actually, I am trying to figure out who Jason Harwell is. I'm probably the only one who probably doesn't know who he is, but he really looks like a young Judd Drake. When you put the pictures together, it looked like a younger version of Judd. So if somebody would tell me that this is not Judd when he was young, I would appreciate it.
We'll have to explore the family tree and find out a little bit. Jason, Judd, you just may discover some new things about yourselves. So Jason works in our public information office and does a great job down there.
Look at them together. Don't they look alike? But Andy, goodbye. I'm not going to do all that sentimental, crazy stuff that Mike just did. Goodbye. I did enjoy my meeting with Patrick's constituents on Sunday. It was very informative and very helpful for me. And this coming Saturday, there is a group of Bethel residents going to Atlanta to look at some of the other Columbia sites. So I'm looking forward to traveling Saturday with the Bethel residents. Been great. This wasn't as bad of a meeting as I thought it was going to be.
Good,
well,
Andy.
Thank you, Kavita and Mike, and if my colleagues would indulge me for a few moments, since it is my last meeting, there are a few things I would like to say. As Kelly mentioned, and Mike, tonight's my last voting meeting after 14 years on the commission. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that'll be happy about that. Come January, Carol Myers will be the new District 8 Commissioner. I've known Carol for a long time. She volunteered on my first campaign, and I'm sure she will do an excellent job as the next District 8 Commissioner. As I look back upon my time representing District 8, there are many memories I will cherish, but mostly it's interactions with people. I was just pondering the other day about all of the individuals directly associated with the county government with whom I have interacted during the years I have served. 3 mayors, 23 commissioners, 2 county managers, 6 assistant managers, and literally dozens of department heads and ACC staff. But the most rewarding relationships have been those I've developed with my constituents, getting to know many of them and responding to their issues, which, in my opinion, is the primary responsibility of local elected officials. It has been the greatest single honor of my life to serve as the District 8 Commissioner. Over the years, many constituents have offered a kind word of appreciation, and you have no idea how much that has meant to me. In this era of social media and instantaneous communication, people are often quick to send a less than civil email, but are somewhat slower to send a note of encouragement. As I've often said, when you're a public servant, lots of things will be said about you, and some of them might even be true. So the fact that so many constituents have sent supportive messages over the years is something that I'll never forget. During my time on the commission, we have faced several major issues. I came into office in the midst of the worst drought in recent memory. Then we dealt with the Great Recession of 2008 and its aftermath. In 2011, we had the murder in the line of duty of an Athens-Clarke County police officer and the shooting and attempted murder of another who is one of my constituents. And now we're facing the devastating effects of COVID-19 and people's righteous indignation over the high-profile murders of African-American citizens in various places across America. These have all posed challenges in various ways to how local government in Athens operates, especially given the differences between what people often think that local government can do and what it actually can do in Georgia. Whilst the above events may have grabbed the headlines, within these contexts, the job of governing and providing services to community residents has gone on quietly in the background, thanks to the dedication of Athens-Clarke County employees who work hard every day to serve ACC's residents. For my own part, over the years, I've focused upon a number of issues facing District 8 that I thought were important. I'm not so naive as to think that everybody has agreed with every decision that I have ever made, but I have tried to make what I thought was the right decision for District 8 at the time. In so doing, seeking credit for things has never really been my driving motivator. That may seem to be bad politics, but I'd like to think that it has produced better policies and outcomes, as I believe that the community is better served by a mayor and commission that can achieve consensus on important matters. This means that we don't all individually always get everything that we want. But as I have often said to anyone who will listen, to be effective in serving constituents, the most important rule in Athens-Clarke County commissioning is to be able to count to 6, as it takes 6 votes to get anything done. This requires an investment of a lot of time in relationship building and serious homework on the issues. As I look back on my own modest contributions, I'm particularly pleased that addressing conditions along the Lexington Road corridor is now firmly on the Commission's agenda after languishing for many years. I'm also happy that the Firefly Trail continues to develop, as I believe that it is truly a jewel of the East Side and the broader community. And I'm happy also that the tennis center was ultimately located at Southeast Clark Park, thereby providing East Side residents with some of the same amenities that many other parts of Athens have long enjoyed. I'm looking forward to the completion of the East Side Library and the Youth Development Facility as part of SPLOST 2020. Beyond the district, I'm gratified to have been involved in several efforts that will bear fruit in the coming years, including working on the plan to redevelop the North Downtown area, which, as you all know, is a $40 million project, which will both improve in real and lasting ways the lives of residents in Bethel homes and facilitate the development of much economic activity. I'm proud to have worked with Commissioners Hamby, as he was there, Commissioner Gertz, and Commissioner Wright, to start the process that resulted in Athens-Clarke County creating the Inclusion Office, designed to make Athens a place more welcoming to all people. Leading efforts, again, along with Mike and Kelly, to create Athens-Clarke County's Department of Economic Development, which has helped bring investment and jobs to our county over the past few years, and working with Mike and Kelly, the Athens Land Trust, and the Riverview Foundation to secure the Tallahassee Forest Nature Preserve as Athens-Clarke County Green Space. To be able to serve the public as an elected official is a privilege granted few. But I cannot and could not have done it alone. It requires the understanding and forbearance of family members. As anyone who has served in this world knows, there are some weeks when commissioners and staff have meetings every night of the week. Even when on vacation, you really never get away from the work. And so in this regard, then, my last words of appreciation are really to say a huge thank you to my wife, Jennifer, for her deep and unwavering support over the years, without which I would not have been able to do this job. So I thank everybody for working with me. I know we haven't always agreed on every issue. That's just the nature of the beast. But I have truly enjoyed this work. I will maybe watch some of your meetings in the future. Some I might be sitting having a cold beer somewhere and got something else going on. But thank you for the support that you have given me over the years. I can honestly say I've learned something from everyone, even when we haven't agreed. This is a great community. This is a great mayor and commission, and I wish you all well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Harrod, and please thank your wife for letting us steal you away for all of these years.
Can we clap? I mean, damn, that was what's up. What's up, Andy? Yeah.
I'm not much of a crier, but I'm doing it right now.
And you're making me cry too. You know that's not my thing.
Cheers, guys. What's going on?
14 years, friends. 14 years.
Can you say methane just for good old time's sake?
Methane.
Andy, we've got you for a couple more meetings. Don't think you can slip out yet. Russell.
There once was a wise man from 8th District who had a curious speech and quick wit. No longer a Tory, he served our county. Of course, we'll miss him much more than a bit. Andy, we love you, and we sincerely, I'm going to miss your wit, and hating that this has to take place virtually, because we had great times, seatmates sitting next to each other, trading barbs back and forth and flipping through the thesaurus to come up with creative ways to categorize our colleagues' behavior and arguments. I'm certainly going to miss that. Looking at the British words and the English words, you've taught me a lot about culture and how to be a good public servant. Your newsletter, as referenced, has been a model that others have followed, and you are revered throughout District 8 and Cedar Creek and all over that area. So I know that you'll continue being a presence and a leader in that area, and we're going to miss you. This government's going to miss your fair-minded appraisal of the issues and your votes. So thanks for your service. Thanks for your friendship and colleagueship. That's all I got.
Thanks, Russell. Jesse.
Hey, y'all. Wow, I think I got to thank Mayor Gertz for encouraging all the emotional vulnerability in our retreats, because it's really spilling out now. I'm really glad that I got to work with you for this short period, Andy, and I think it's a real testament to how much you genuinely care that you've continued to be really thoughtful and diligent, even in all these work session things we're discussing that you won't even get to vote on. So, yeah, I've really admired just an incredible work ethic that I've seen you scrutinize spelling and grammar time and again, effectively, as well as some of the bigger picture things. I'm really excited to be joining this body, and it's also not lost on me that I'm only here because someone else is not. And I don't want to steal Commissioner Harrod's moment, but I do want to acknowledge, since this is really my first opportunity to do so in an official capacity in the go-round, that the Neesmith family and all of y'all who have been very close with and worked with Jerry over the years are in my thoughts now and moving forward. I don't think there's ever going to be a time where I'll be able to fully put behind me what this is, what the situation is that has brought me here. And I imagine that's going to be true for a lot of others as well. And yet I'm really excited for the work moving forward. So with all my big picture ideas, I'm excited to talk with you about, spare sharing any of those tonight and pass it along to Commissioner Denson, and just want to wish you the best, Commissioner Harrod.
Man, this wow, tonight is just the perfect reminder of how unique, which I think Andy spoke to a little bit, this position is, this role is, this body is, that it truly is this body that is fluid, that is changing, that always has to find a way to persevere and live and change and still be effective with new people coming on, people leaving, to a crazy living thing. It's so interesting. And yeah, and so I definitely want to say I definitely appreciated working with Andy. It's, to me, it's kind of sad that Andy you don't get your proper send off, which should be on the back of a fire truck sitting next to my Hamby dressed like Chewbacca. Like that, man. I was just thinking, like, that's the ending that we all need, but you're not gonna get it unless Mike's already on his way over to your house right now, which is possible, I guess. But yeah,
I've got it on.
But I definitely do have appreciated. We haven't always agreed. We haven't. But I have definitely really do appreciate, I think, the thoughtfulness, the seriousness that you take every moment, whether it's where a sewer line is going to be laid or it's the correct verb tense, of a word and a document. But I've appreciated it, and like you said, like, I've definitely learned things from you. I think we've learned things from everyone. So I appreciate your time and you serving. And with that, also we'll definitely welcome Jesse on. I mean, it's such a unique experience to be able to work with this body and all these people here. The only other thing I'm going to talk about is a little bit of election stuff. Just want to say thanks to the Board of Elections staff and all the poll workers who worked today, not including people who worked during the recounts and the audits, and they're still going on, and the November election. And then, of course, we have another election coming up on January 5th. And on that, just want to remind anybody who might still be watching us that they can go ahead and get their absentee ballot by visiting securevotega.com, and you can get the absentee ballot to be sent to you now, because you need to jump on that. But just end it with appreciate Commissioner Harrod, and I'll throw it on to, I guess, Commissioner Link here.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tim.
Congratulations, Andy. I thank you for 14 years, I guess. That's a long haul. You deserve a big break. So I do wish you the best. I hope you get all the R&R that you deserve. And I know we won't be seeing the last of you. If I know you'll pop up from time to time. So yeah, congratulations and best of luck with everything. I do want to remind everyone out there to continue to stay safe in this pandemic. Things are, infection rates are rising across the country. They may not be rising as quickly here. And, I think in a lot of ways we can attribute that to the warm weather that we've had in this region, keeping people outside. But things have suddenly gotten very, very cold. And I know folks will be tempted to spend more time indoors, possibly mixing and mingling with people outside your household. And I want to urge folks to please avoid those situations. Please wear your masks at all times. Our county infection rate is lower than most of the surrounding county. And I believe we can attribute that to the fact that we do have a mask mandate in Athens-Clarke County. And, people seem to be doing a fairly good job of following it. So let's keep it that way. I do want to also point out that we did get our first wastewater report, our localized wastewater report, and it did indicate higher viral levels in a particular location. And lo and behold, yes, there has been an outbreak in one public housing community, and there's been a mobile unit testing went there, I believe today. So, I think that's going to be a very effective tool to help us contain this in at least a couple focused areas. So I want to thank the manager and everybody who pushed forward to have that program move forward. And I hope that we can make that data, that weekly report publicly available, and, be able to decipher it for folks. So people are aware where there are increased viral levels and possible indications of pending outbreaks. So I hope we can have more discussion about that. But yeah, thanks again, Andy. Thanks for all your service, and best of luck.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So I got kind of inspired by Russell with his rhymes, and so I wrote you something, Andy, while we were sitting here.
Bring it.
I hope it's okay. All right.
This is like the commission version of I was at home in my pajamas and I decided to come up to the mic when I heard the meeting. So, Commissioner Parker.
Yeah. Okay, and this is the first time we've ever rapped at a commission meeting, hopefully the last time, but here we go. It's really sad to watch Andy Herod go. It's been really fun learning from you, working and sharing goals. Even when we butted heads like a pair of foes, it's been a real pleasure and we'll miss you because we cherish you. The next time the commission meets someone different in the seat, I hope you're sitting eating cookies by your Christmas tree. Andy.
I love it.
I've learned a lot from you in my 2 years on the commission. Your incisiveness with the great questions that you always ask. Your insistence on getting great stuff for the people who live along Lexington Road and working with you on that project has been a real mentorship experience for me, whether you realized it or not. And so I just, wish you the best and what's to come for you. Well-deserved relaxation ahead. And just thank you so much. And then I got two quick items of business. The first is a request that I received from some constituents in my district who are still very much impacted by the tragic killing of Ariel Thumpa Calloway, who passed away in an act of gun violence in July of 2019. Following her death, some of the residents of Carriage Court erected a makeshift sign renaming the street Thumpa Ave as a memorial testament to Mrs. Calloway, and have requested that we formally rename the street in her honor. And so I am making that formal request this evening. My second item of business is related to COVID relief. We got CARES Act funding from the federal level, as well as some local stimulus that we passed to ensure people can keep their lights on and their kids fed and their rent paid. And given that the second round of COVID relief is not clearly coming from the federal government anytime soon, it may, but certainly not anytime in our immediate future. And the very real need for folks that are, struggling to pay bills around the holidays, struggling to pay rent right now, and will continue to be in that situation in January, February, March after those federal funds have dried up, as well as some of those local dollars. I would like to request that we perhaps hold a special called session next Thursday to pass additional local relief for organizations like Athens Land Trust that have been helping with rental assistance to fill that gap between the funds that were available through CARES and the CDBG funding that will be made available to these organizations in March to ensure continuity of their services through the January, February, March time period. But that's it. Have a great one, Andy. You deserved it, man. I hope you have a great time in retirement. And that's all I got tonight.
Thank you. I've never had a song written about me, and the way that you could just do that, I'm really impressed. So I appreciate the effort. Thank you.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm not rapping. I can't do it. I'm sorry. I don't have it in me. But Commissioner Herod, I did have a long speech, but I would like to. You have been a real inspiration. I'm going to miss you saying it during commission meetings. I have a question. It's actually for the attorney. So I'm going to miss that. I'm going to miss the professorness and the wordsmithing. And your newsletter is literally the gold standard in Athens-Clarke County, period. Probably the state of Georgia. So thank you for your commitment to the east side. Thank you for your commitment to Athens. And I know, I hate saying the word, I'm going to miss you because I know I'm going to see you around. And if you ever want a beer, you want to de-stress, give me a call. To echo Commissioner Link, COVID is still real. There are spikes all over the country. It's getting bad. So please, if a vaccination is coming soon, please do not be afraid to get it. I think there's a sentiment throughout the country that, I don't want to be vaccinated, but please consider getting vaccinated. But in the meantime, continue to social distance, wear a mask, wash your hands, and be safe out there, especially during this holiday season. And today is Giving Tuesday. If you can give to a campaign, please give to a local charity or a statewide or national charity. I would like for people to give to Jordan Legal Services because they have done great work for people, low-income individuals who cannot afford a lawyer, and they're assisting individuals with rental assistance as well, with legal representation. And this was a weird shout out, but I would like to give a shout out to Greg McGarity, the athletics director for UGA. He has been a great neighbor, and it is sad that he is stepping down from the athletic director and moving to Florida. So just thank him for all his, for turning the athletic program around and being a good steward. As well, hopefully everyone voted today, January 5th. There's another election. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everybody. Get some rest, spend time with family, stay COVID free. And I would like to thank the commissioners and other individuals, including the Firefly Trail people, T-SPLOST, and the rest of the Trail Committee members who took a walk with me and Commissioner Thornton and Link Sunday in the very cold, in the bushes, by the way, to look at some of the issues with the Firefly Trail. And I would like to thank y'all for participating. That's all I have.
Commissioner Davenport, I realized that I failed to have us suspend the rules for those last couple of items. So before we adjourn, would you mind making a motion for suspension of rules?
Motion to suspend the rules. So moved.
Second.
All right, and these are for items 25 through 29. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. And I just need a second very brief vote to affirm approval of items 25 through 29 under suspension of rules. Do I hear a motion for affirmation of those?
So,
All right, we got a motion from Commissioner Parker, second from Commissioner Edwards. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, last but not least, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Got a motion from Commissioner Link, a second from Commissioner Davenport to adjourn. All right, everybody, at 8:46 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are signing off. Great work, everyone. Have a fantastic night.
Good
See you
night.
next Tuesday.
Yeah.